Commander Zektar of the Hegemony Fifth Fleet watched through the observation deck as his massive dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, drifted toward the small collection of ships floating in the void. The alien vessels looked pitiful compared to his fleet's enormous warships. Each of his battle cruisers was 10 times larger than the biggest ship in the unknown fleet. "What do our sensors tell us about these toys?" Zektar asked his tactical officer, his 4 arms crossed in amusement. Lieutenant Vexal consulted her readings. "Sir, the fleet consists of 12 vessels. The largest appears to be some sort of command ship, roughly 800 meters in length. The others are smaller, ranging from 300 to 600 meters. Their hulls appear to be made of primitive steel alloys with some carbon fiber composites." The bridge crew erupted in clicking laughter. "Steel? In space combat? These aliens must be incredibly backward." "Energy signatures?" Zektar inquired, still grinning. "Minimal, sir. Whatever power sources they're using are barely registering on our instruments. We're detecting what might be fusion reactors, but they're so weak they couldn't power a single one of our point defense systems." Admiral Cortex, the overall commander of the Hegemony Task Force, materialized as a hologram on the bridge. His massive frame filled the projection space, all 6 of his eyes focused intently on the view screen. "Commander Zektar, have you made contact with these primitives?" "Not yet, Admiral. We were just analyzing their pathetic excuse for a fleet." "Shall we demand their immediate surrender?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Look at them, Commander. They're probably still using chemical propulsion. I doubt they even understand faster-than-light travel. This will be the easiest conquest in Hegemony history." Across the various ships of the Hegemony fleet, crew members gathered at observation windows to gawk at the tiny alien vessels. The contrast was absurd. The Hegemony's smallest destroyer was larger than anything the unknown aliens had brought to this encounter. On the bridge of the crushing Talon, Captain Mordeth shook his massive reptilian head. "I've seen civilian pleasure craft with more impressive specifications than those ships." "Are we sure they're even military vessels?" His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're picking up transmissions from their fleet. It appears they're trying to establish communication protocols." "Put it through," Mordeth ordered, curious to hear what these primitives had to say. A voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in a strange but somehow melodic language. The universal translator took a moment to process the alien syntax before converting it to standard Hegemony speech. "Unknown Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force ship Resilient. You have entered human-controlled space without authorization. State your intentions immediately." The bridge fell silent for a moment before erupting in raucous laughter. Human-controlled space? These tiny ships thought they controlled anything? "Humans," Mordeth mused, testing the word. "Never heard of them. Must be some backwater species that hasn't learned their place in the galaxy yet." Meanwhile, on the Hegemony flagship Supreme Authority, Admiral Cortex was receiving similar reports from across his fleet. Intelligence officers were frantically trying to find any reference to these humans in their databases, but coming up empty. "Sir," reported Intelligence Chief Zalthor, "we have no records of this species. They don't appear in any of our conquest records, trade agreements, or diplomatic files. They seem to be completely unknown to galactic civilization." "That explains their primitive technology," the Admiral mused. "They've probably just developed interstellar travel and think they can claim territory. How quaint." Back on Zektar's bridge, the human transmission was still coming through. "I repeat, Unknown Fleet, you are trespassing in Terran space. We are giving you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. If you do not comply, we will be forced to take defensive action." The laughter on the bridge reached new heights. Defensive action? With those tin cans? "Commander," suggested Lieutenant Vexal, wiping tears from her optical sensors. Perhaps we should respond. It might be amusing to hear what they consider defensive action. Zektar nodded, still chuckling. Open a channel. The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. The aliens looked remarkably similar to several other bipedal species the hegemony had conquered, though their skin tones varied more than most. The one who had been speaking appeared to be female, with short dark hair and alert brown eyes that seemed to be studying everything visible on Zektar's bridge with uncomfortable intensity. "I am Commander Zektar of the Hegemony Fifth Fleet," he announced, making no effort to hide his amusement. "Your Terran space now belongs to the Hegemony. You will surrender your vessels immediately and prepare to be escorted to processing facilities." The human captain's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Commander. This is your final warning. Withdraw from our territory immediately." "And if we refuse?" Zektar asked, genuinely curious about what these primitives thought they could do. "Then we'll remove you." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of several hegemony officers struggling to control their laughter. "Remove them? A dozen primitive ships against a full hegemony task force?" "Captain Chen," Zektar said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Perhaps you don't understand the situation. My flagship alone carries enough firepower to glass an entire planet. Your 12 little ships combined couldn't dent our shields." 13 ships, the human corrected quietly. "I beg your pardon?" "You said 12 ships. We have 13. Zektar glanced at his sensor operator, who quickly rechecked her readings. "Sir, sensors still show 12 vessels." The human captain smiled, and something about that smile made several hegemony officers feel inexplicably uneasy. "You might want to check your long-range sensors," Captain Chen suggested. The tactical officer's hands flew over her console, extending their sensor range to maximum. Her face went pale as the readings came back. "Sir, there's a 13th ship. It's massive, much larger than anything we've ever encountered. How did our sensors miss it?" "Where?" Zektar demanded. It's right behind us, sir. 15 kilometers off our stern. I don't understand how it got there without us detecting it." Throughout the hegemony fleet, alarms began sounding as the massive vessel suddenly appeared on everyone's sensors simultaneously. It was as if a moon had simply materialized in space. On the view screen, Captain Chen's smile widened slightly. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the TDF Defiance. She's what we call a dreadnought." The hegemony officers stared at their sensors in disbelief. The human ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of their largest battleship. How had something that massive approached without being detected? "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Vexall. "Nothing that large should be able to achieve stealth." "Commander," came the voice of Admiral Cortex over the comm, tension clearly audible. "We need answers. How did they get a ship that size past our detection grid?" Before Zektar could respond, Captain Chen spoke again. Admiral Cortex stared at the tactical display on his flagship's bridge, his 6 eyes wide with disbelief. The holographic representation showed his once mighty fleet, now completely surrounded by human vessels that seemed to defy everything he knew about naval architecture and physics. "Status report," he demanded, his voice strained. "Sir, the human fleet consists of 37 capital ships ranging from 2 to 5 kilometers in length. Their energy signatures are unprecedented. Each ship appears to be generating more power than our entire task force combined." The Admiral's tactical advisor, a scarred veteran named Grixnall, approached cautiously. "Sir, perhaps we should consider retreat. These humans obviously possess technology far beyond our initial assessment." "Retreat?" Cortex snarled. "The hegemony does not retreat from primitives." "Admiral," interrupted his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander." Put it through. The main screen flickered, revealing a human male who appeared to be middle-aged by their species' standards. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration, but his eyes held the unmistakable look of someone accustomed to command. Admiral Corthex, I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres of the Terran Defense Force. I understand you've been having a conversation with Captain Chen about withdrawing from our space. The Admiral straightened, attempting to project authority despite his deteriorating situation. I am Admiral Corthex of the Hegemony 3rd Expansion Fleet. Your impressive display doesn't change the fact that this region is now claimed by the Hegemony Empire. Admiral Torres nodded thoughtfully. I see. And the Hegemony Empire, that would be the civilization that has conquered 47 star systems over the past 3 centuries, correct? 49 systems, Corthex corrected proudly. We've been quite successful in our expansion efforts. 49 systems in 300 years, Torres repeated. That's actually rather modest. Something about the human's tone made the Admiral uneasy. And how many systems do the humans control? Well, that's a complicated question. Do you mean systems with permanent human populations, or systems under human protection, or systems where we maintain strategic assets? The definitions matter. All of them, Corthex said impatiently. Torres consulted a small device on his wrist. As of this morning, approximately 1,400 systems with permanent settlements, another 6,000 under protective jurisdiction, and strategic assets in roughly 12,000 systems throughout this galactic arm. The bridge of the Supreme Authority fell completely silent. Even the soft hum of the ship's systems seemed muted. That's impossible, Grixnall whispered. No single species could control that much territory. Oh, we don't control it alone, Torres clarified. We have treaties and alliances with hundreds of species. The Terran Defense Force protects trade routes and maintains peace for the entire local sector group. We found that cooperation works better than conquest. Admiral Corthex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare, genuine uncertainty. If your civilization is so vast, why haven't we encountered you before? Because until today, you weren't worth our attention. The bluntness of the statement hit like a physical blow. Not worth their attention? The mighty Hegemony Empire wasn't worth noticing? Your expansion has been limited to this small cluster of systems. Torres continued conversationally. Frankly, we weren't sure if you were a legitimate interstellar civilization or just an unusually organized piracy operation. Your technology levels suggested the latter. Our technology is among the most advanced in known space, Corthex protested. Perhaps in your known space, Torres agreed. But your known space is quite small. Would you like a demonstration of the difference in our capabilities? Before the Admiral could respond, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Sir, the human ships are powering weapons. Energy readings they're off the scale. I've never seen anything like this. Weapons test, Torres announced calmly. We'll be firing on the asteroid cluster approximately 50,000 kilometers to your starboard. You might want to observe. The Hegemony Fleet's sensors focused on the distant asteroids, a collection of rocks ranging from a few hundred meters to several kilometers in diameter. It was the kind of target that would require sustained bombardment from multiple ships to completely destroy. A single beam of coherent energy lanced out from one of the human dreadnoughts. It wasn't the crude plasma or particle beam weaponry the Hegemony used, but something far more sophisticated, a stream of pure energy that seemed to bend space around itself. The beam touched the largest asteroid for less than a second. The entire cluster, millions of tons of rock and metal, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not shattered, not vaporized. Gone, as if it had never been there at all. That was our lowest power setting, Torres mentioned casually. We use those weapons for mining operations mostly. Throughout the hegemony fleet, officers stared at their sensors in shock. The energy readings from that single shot exceeded anything in their weapons databases. It was more power than their entire fleet could generate working together. How? Admiral Cortex asked quietly. How what? How do we generate that much power? How do we focus it so precisely? How do we make our ships so large yet so maneuverable? Or are you asking how a species develops technology that advanced? All of it. Torres leaned back in his chair. The short answer is time. Admiral, your civilization has existed for what, 10,000 years? Humans have been spacefaring for almost 15,000. But more importantly, we've spent most of that time learning rather than conquering. Learning. Every species we've encountered has taught us something. The Vectari showed us how to manipulate gravity. The Gelnari shared their knowledge of energy manipulation. The Mordun taught us stealth technologies. Instead of enslaving them, we partnered with them. Their knowledge became our knowledge. The Admiral looked around his bridge at his officers' faces, seeing his own growing realization reflected in their expressions. The hegemony had conquered dozens of species, enslaving their populations and seizing their resources, but they had never bothered to learn from them. Your stealth technology, Grixnall said suddenly. How did you hide ships that massive? We didn't hide them, Torres replied. We folded them into dimensional pockets. The ships you initially saw were just our forward scouts. Captain Chen's task force specializes in first contact situations. The main fleet was literally in another dimension until we needed them. Dimensional manipulation, the tactical officer breathed. That's theoretical at best in our science. Theoretical for you, perhaps. But the Gelnari have been using dimensional technology for millennia. They were happy to share it once we helped them resolve a civil war that had been devastating their homeworld. Admiral Cortex was beginning to understand the scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a more advanced military, it was a completely different approach to civilization itself. What do you want from us? He asked, finally. Nothing, Torres replied simply. We want you to leave our space and cease your expansion in this direction. Beyond that, your internal affairs are your own business. And if we refuse? Torres was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Admiral, your 49 conquered systems represent about 0.03% of the territory under human protection. You are not a threat to us. You're barely an inconvenience. However, he continued, if you continue your expansion toward human space, you will eventually encounter species under our protection. At that point, you would become our problem. And we are very good at solving problems. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The human wasn't even threatening them directly, just stating a simple fact about what would happen if they became an issue requiring resolution. What about our honor? Grixnall asked. The hegemony cannot simply retreat without consequence. Torres nodded understandingly. Honor is important. Tell me, what would be more honorable, retreating in the face of superior force after learning the true scope of the galaxy, or leading your people to destruction through stubborn pride? Furthermore, he added, there's nothing stopping you from continuing your expansion in other directions. The galaxy is vast. There's plenty of room for a civilization of your size to grow without conflicting with our interests. Admiral Cortex looked at his tactical display one more time. 37 human ships surrounded his fleet, each one capable of destroying his entire force single-handedly. Beyond them lay a civilization that controlled thousands of systems and had formed alliances across the galaxy. Admiral Torres, he said formally, the hegemony fleet will withdraw from this region. You have our word that we will not approach your territory again. Thank you, Admiral. I appreciate your wisdom. Before you go, though, might I suggest something? What? Your technology isn't as primitive as I initially suggested. Your ship designs show impressive engineering, especially considering your resource limitations. If you're interested in trade relationships rather than conquest, many of our allied species would be happy to establish commerce with the hegemony." The Admiral blinked in surprise. After demonstrating overwhelming superiority, the humans were offering trade agreements? "Why would you want to trade with us?" Torres smiled. "Because every species has something unique to offer. Your ship designs suggest you've solved some interesting problems with resource efficiency. That knowledge could be valuable, and in exchange, we could offer technologies that would improve life for your people. I will convey your offer to the Hegemony Council." "Excellent. Captain Chen will provide you with communication protocols for our diplomatic corps. Have a safe journey, Admiral." As the transmission ended, Admiral Cortex sat in his command chair, trying to process everything that had just occurred. In the span of an hour, his understanding of the galaxy and humanity's place in it had been completely revolutionized. "Now, Commander, I believe you were about to withdraw from our space." This changes nothing," Zektar stammered, though his voice lacked its previous confidence. "One ship, no matter how large, cannot stand against an entire hegemony fleet." "You're absolutely right," Captain Chen agreed. "One ship couldn't. That's why we didn't bring just one." The tactical officer's hands trembled as she worked her console. "Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Something's wrong with space itself." On screens throughout the hegemony fleet, space began to shimmer and distort. The stars themselves seemed to bend and twist as reality rippled around them. "What's happening?" Admiral Cortex demanded over the fleet comm. "Unknown, sir. It's like space-time is being manipulated somehow." Captain Chen's voice cut through the growing panic. "What you're seeing is the activation of our fleet stealth system shutting down. We thought it would be more polite to let you see what you're actually facing." One by one, massive ships began materializing throughout the system. They didn't decloak or drop shields. They simply appeared, as if they had been folded out of space itself. Each one was enormous, dwarfing even the largest hegemony vessels. Within minutes, the Hegemony Task Force found itself surrounded by a human fleet that outnumbered them 3-1, with ships that made their most powerful dreadnoughts look like escort frigates. 37 capital ships, the tactical officer reported in a voice barely above a whisper. "Each one larger than our flagship. Sir, how is this possible?" But Zektar wasn't listening. He was staring at the tactical display, watching as more and more impossibly large human vessels appeared on his screens. The small fleet they had been laughing at moments ago was revealed to be just a tiny fraction of what was actually present. "Commander," Captain Chen said, her voice still calm and polite, "I believe we were discussing your withdrawal from Terran space." 6 months after the encounter with the human fleet, Admiral Cortex stood in the Grand Council chamber of the Hegemony homeworld, facing the assembled Supreme Council. The massive chamber, carved from a single piece of black stone, had witnessed countless declarations of victory and expansion over the centuries. Today felt different. "Admiral," spoke Supreme Chancellor Vorthok, his ancient voice echoing through the chamber, "your report from the human encounter has been concerning. The Council requires clarification on several points." "Of course, Chancellor. What would you like me to explain?" "First, this claim that humans control thousands of star systems. Our intelligence networks have found no evidence of such a vast civilization." Admiral Cortex had anticipated this question. "Chancellor, our intelligence networks cover 49 systems and their immediate neighbors. The humans operate on a scale we never imagined possible. It's like using a map of a single city to understand an entire continent." Counselor Thexron leaned forward. "Even if we accept these exaggerated numbers, surely their technology claims were mere propaganda. Dimensional manipulation? Ships that exist in other realities? This sounds like fantasy." "I brought proof," the Admiral replied calmly. He activated a holographic display showing the sensor recordings from the encounter. The Council watched in stunned silence as the massive human fleet materialized seemingly from nowhere, and as a single weapon beam erased an entire asteroid cluster. This is authentic footage? Chancellor Vorthak asked weakly. Verified by 3 independent technical teams, the energy readings alone should convince you. That single weapon discharge generated more power than our entire home defense grid. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For centuries, the hegemony had seen itself as the apex of galactic civilization. The idea that they were essentially children playing with toys compared to established powers was difficult to accept. "What of their offer of trade relations?" asked Councillor Mektar. "Have we received any follow-up communication?" "Yes," Admiral Corthex replied, activating another holographic display. 3 human diplomatic vessels arrived at the edge of our territory last week. They've been waiting patiently for our response to their trade proposals. Waiting? For a week? Why haven't they demanded an immediate audience? Because that's not how they operate. The humans seem to genuinely respect other species' decision-making processes. They understand that major policy changes take time. Councillor Thexran scoffed. More likely, they're planning something. No civilization gains that much power without being ruthlessly aggressive. Actually, interrupted a new voice, I think I can shed some light on that question. The council turned to see Chief Intelligence Analyst Kexaval approaching the speaking platform. She activated her own holographic display, showing star charts and data streams. Over the past 6 months, I've been investigating everything we can learn about human civilization. What I've found is extraordinary. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic arm, with different colored zones indicating various civilizations and territories. The humans weren't lying about their territorial extent. If anything, they were being modest. But here's what's truly remarkable. Look at the pattern of their expansion. The map animated, showing the growth of human-controlled space over time. Instead of the aggressive, conquering spread typical of most expanding civilizations, human territory grew in a complex web of alliances and partnerships. They don't conquer systems, Kexval explained. They protect them. When a species asks for help, whether against natural disasters, hostile neighbors, or internal conflicts, the humans respond. In gratitude, these species often join their alliance network. That's absurd, Councillor Thexran declared. No civilization spreads influence through altruism. What's the real strategy? The strategy is exactly what it appears to be, Kexval replied. And it's brilliant. Every species they've helped becomes a loyal ally. Every trade relationship makes them stronger. Every technological exchange increases their capabilities. They've created a self-reinforcing cycle of cooperation. Chancellor Vorthak studied the display carefully. What about military conflicts? Surely they must fight wars. They do, but not the way we understand warfare. When the humans go to war, it's typically to defend their allies or stop species that threaten the peaceful order they've created. And when they fight, the display changed to show several combat recordings obtained through various intelligence sources. They don't just win battles, Kexval continued. They end wars so decisively that the aggressors never recover. But then, and this is crucial, they offer the defeated species the same alliance opportunities they give everyone else. The Council watched footage of human fleets dismantling hostile armadas with casual efficiency, then providing humanitarian aid to the same species they had just defeated. It's cultural indoctrination on a galactic scale, Admiral Corthex realized aloud. They're not conquering civilizations. They're converting them to their world view. And it works, Kexval confirmed. I've found no evidence of any species that has ever left the Human Alliance network. Once you're part of their system, the benefits are too great to abandon. Counselor Mektar was studying the trade proposals on his personal display. These offers are genuine. They're really willing to share advanced technology in exchange for our manufacturing techniques? According to their diplomatic team, yes. They're particularly interested in our resource efficiency innovations and our biological adaptation technologies. Biological adaptation? Admiral Korthex smiled grimly. Apparently, humans are unusual among spacefaring species in that they can only survive on planets very similar to their homeworld. Most of the species in their alliance can live in much more diverse environments. Our genetic modification techniques would be valuable to them. So what do we gain in return? Kexval brought up the detailed trade proposals. Fusion reactor efficiency improvements that would triple our energy output. Gravitational manipulation technology for construction and transportation. Medical advances that could extend our lifespans by 50%. Communication technologies that would let us maintain real-time contact across our entire territory. The silence that followed was broken by Chancellor Vorthak's quiet question. What happens to the hegemony if we accept these trade agreements? Do we become just another client species in their empire? No, Admiral Korthex replied firmly. I've studied their other alliance relationships extensively. Allied species maintain complete internal autonomy. The humans only intervene in 3 circumstances: if asked for help, if someone attacks an ally, or if a species begins threatening others unprovoked. And our expansion plans? We can continue expanding, just not in the direction of human space. As Fleet Admiral Torres said, the galaxy is vast. There's plenty of room for growth. Counselor Thexron still looked skeptical. What about our military? Our entire culture is built around conquest and strength. How do we maintain our identity in this alliance network? Actually, Kexval interjected, that might not be as much of a problem as you think. Several human allied species maintain strong military traditions. The Zenthkari are apparently even more warlike than we are, but they've channeled their aggression toward defending the Alliance and exploring dangerous regions of space. Exploration? The humans are constantly pushing into uncharted areas of the galaxy. There's always need for strong, militarily capable species to scout new regions and deal with threats. Our fleets could serve as advance forces for expansion into genuinely unclaimed territory. Admiral Korthex nodded. It would give our people a sense of purpose while contributing to something larger than ourselves. Chancellor Vorthak was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the enormous decision before them. Finally, he spoke. The question before us is whether the hegemony adapts to this new reality or remains isolated in our small corner of space, eventually stagnating while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. There's another consideration, Kexval added. The humans aren't the only major power in the galaxy. There are other alliance networks, some of which are considerably less benevolent than the Human Federation. If we remain weak and isolated, we might eventually be conquered by someone far less reasonable than Fleet Admiral Torres. The council members exchanged glances, each realizing the same fundamental truth. Their small empire was not the center of galactic civilization they had believed it to be. They were barely a footnote in a galaxy full of powers beyond their imagination. Very well, Chancellor Vorthak announced. Admiral Korthex, you will return to the human diplomatic team and inform them that the hegemony accepts their trade proposals. We wish to explore alliance opportunities as well. Yes, Chancellor. And Admiral, when you meet with them again, I want you to ask about their exploration programs. If the hegemony is to have a future, it will be as part of something greater than ourselves. As the council session ended, Admiral Korthex reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. 6 months ago, he had commanded what he thought was a powerful fleet against what appeared to be primitive vessels. Today, he was about to negotiate entry into a galactic civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. The little fleet they had mocked had indeed belonged to mankind, but it was just the tiniest fraction of humanity's true power. And perhaps, if the hegemony proved worthy, they might someday contribute their own strength to protecting the peace that vast civilization had created among the stars. 3 weeks later, Admiral Cortex stood on the observation deck of his flagship as it approached the human diplomatic station at the edge of Terran space. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive structure that served as both a meeting place for dozens of different species and a demonstration of the technology available to human allies. As his ship docked, he could see vessels from civilizations he had never heard of, representing technologies and designs that challenged everything he thought he knew about space travel. The hegemony's journey from conquerors to partners was just beginning, but for the first time in his career, Admiral Cortex looked forward to discovery rather than domination. The galaxy was far larger, more complex, and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. And humanity had shown them that there was room in it for everyone willing to reach for something better than mere survival.